Adonenu, Moreno, ורבינו, מלך המשיח, לעולם. Welcome to the summary of the weekly Dvar Malchus from Shabbas, Mishpotim, Shalom Dovber Baruch. Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit starts off with the fact that we know that every single thing that happens is a shacha pratis, and there's a purpose in every single thing. You have to learn a lesson for an avodas Hashem. Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit brings that this week, out of Shabbos, there was a meeting between America and Russia, which together they decided to condense and put in less money for weapons, and instead use that money to help people to have food for the countries. And even before that, on the Wednesday was the speech of the President of America. Over there he spoke about the same topic of taking money, instead of using money for weapons, to use it to help people, help citizens of the country. The Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit says, if you learn a lesson, what's the Yedah from us, from this occurrence that happened, and what's the connection to the Parsha of this week? First of all, it's a lesson for us. And our job is to bring the Mashiach. As one of the prophecies of the Gula is, that they will beat their swords into plowshares, and the nations won't fight with one another. And how will all this happen? Navi says this will be through Mashiach, because the whole idea, the times of Mashiach, all the nations of the world will all come together, come bow down to Mashiach. And because in our time, as we see, in our time as we're standing at the highest time for Mashiach to come, and already in the beginning of Mashiach's coming, therefore we already see how Mashiach is accomplishing on the nations of the world. And you would see that even the nations of the world are starting to do peaceful and good ideas. And that's why this is the time when this meeting happened and the end of the Cold War. Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit says this idea is also emphasized in the place where this happened, at the city where the meeting was. It was in New York. Why in New York? That's the house. That's where the base of rebbeinu is, 770. The place where it's the source of spreading of Yiddishkeit all over the world, and all the shluchim of the Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit throughout all the world come from 770. And that's why this is the place where the President of America, the President of Russia come together to speak about this idea of taking money, instead of using it for weapons, to use it for the citizens of the country. Not only the place, also the time, because this time, first of all, it was this meeting happened on Friday. Friday out of Shabbos. Shabbos is the day of shvisa, destroying, because in times of Mashiach will destroy all things that are damaged. So this week, this Friday, there was the destroying of damage, taking this meeting of taking money from using for weapons, use it for good things. And also the date of the month, the 26th. The 26th is Chavav, the numerical value of Shem Havaya, Hashem's name, that shows in the time of the Geula. And especially at this Friday, is the last Friday in the 11th month of Shvat. That's the month of the yard site, of the passing of the previous Rebbe. That's the month of the beginning of the Nesius of the Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit, our generation of the Geula. Therefore, in this last Friday of this month, of the beginning of the leadership of the generation of the Geula, is very much emphasized ideas of Mashiach. Therefore, on this Friday, Mashiach has an accomplishment on the nations of the world, and they themselves come to announce about this idea of a chitzur chaveis l'mitim. This idea is emphasized in the Parsha of the week. What's this week's Parsha? Mishpotim. Mishpotim are unique mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs that we can also understand. And what's unique? We don't fulfill the mitzvah because we understand it. We fulfill it because Hashem said, and Hashem's ratzon, Hashem's will permeates the mind of a person. So we do it like Hashem said. And this idea that Hashem says permeates the mind of a person, that's the whole purpose of the Gula. And the Gula, all the nations of the world, and everybody will only be working and knowing Hashem. And this is understood that that's the chitzur chaveis l'mitim. The nations themselves are taking their swords and making them into plowshares. Even though it's something that's understood, it makes more sense to act in a peaceful way. Nevertheless, thousands and thousands of years, nations of the world just fought and fought and fought. So how come now, suddenly they're coming to make peace? Because now is a time, as the Torah said, that in times of Mashiach, the nations of the world will have chitzur chaveis l'mitim. And more specifically, this is because of the psakim of the Rabbanim. The Rabbanim made a psakim that we already have someone who is Mashiach. He's Mechesed Mashiach Padayin. That psakim permeated the world, permeated the mazel and the minds of the nations of the world. They should make this announcement of the Chitzach HaVesamid. This idea is also emphasized in the continuation of the Parshas. That last week's Parsha, we finished Parsha Yisroi, which speaks about the Mizbeach, the altar. And right after we speak about this week's Parsha, the Mishpotim, the mitzvahs that we can also understand. Next week's Parsha, Teruma, speaks about the building of the Mishkan, of a tabernacle in the desert. And in between, last week's Parsha speaks about the altar of the Mizbeach. The next week's Parsha, the Mishkan, comes Mishpotim to show that all these ideas of the Mizbeach and the Mishkan have to be drawn down into the world. The world itself is announcing a time of the redemption has arrived. And especially this week's Parsha Mishpotim, our mitzvahs to understand, are speaking about the idea of Galus, the idea of the whole, in Gemara, the whole tractate, the whole Masechta of Nezikin comes from this week's Parsha. And there itself, we have three levels. We have which speak about the idea of exile, first and second exile, because over there's already a damage that already is done, there's already an argument. However, the last part of Nezikin, that's not talking about damage that already happened. Right? Two people come together, they want to refrain from a damage. They want to begin with make an agreement with this, everything should be a peaceful way. And also in this Masechta of Abasa, there are many topics. Speak about Mashiach, also the topic about the Leviyasan, and Mashiach, Hashem will build for Yerushalayim unique stones, and Yerushalayim will be high 300 parsa. And that speaks about in this week's Parsha Mishpotim. According to this, is the great wonder. It's understood. How could it be that we're still on Galus? How could it be that even the nations of the world are already announcing a time of redemption has arrived? Nevertheless, we're not in Yerushalayim. So the Rebbe Moshiach Shlit understood how much we need to do everything we can that's going to actually bring the plain language of the Gula. First of all, the idea of Mishpotim. Mishpotim, what's Mishpotim? It's mitzvahs that are one person and his friend. What's the idea of tzedakah? And also the idea of, when we read about Mincha, the idea of Aslamikash, of building shuls and making shuls and Beit Medrash. And especially in our days, we are coming now from our 25th Chaf Hei of Shvat, which goes on the idea of Irchas Kaidim, Kais Vorchas Meisal, the idea of blessing all Yidden with Avos Yisrael. And they're coming the next day, which is 26th of Shvat, the idea of Shemavaya, and then it's 27th, Zach. The idea of Shemen Zayzach, pure oil, and Chav Chesed, the Koyach, the strength of Rosh Shvat until 29 days, which is the days of the month, and we're going into the month of Adar, which Adar is the month of Purim. Purim is the idea of the Gula, and from this month of Adar, Shav Purim it says Mismach Gula. We bring one Gula to the other Gula. That's the day of Pesach, and the main thing is the Gula Mitzvah Shemesh come right now. And we won't even have to wait till Pesach. We won't have to wait till Chodesh Adar. But right now, and today, Chav Zayin Shvat, we already have an idea of the Beis Mikdash and the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. The Rebbe King Moshiach Shlit says it. Take it from Miyad. And Miyad stands for the last three generations. Mashiach, Menachem Shmei, which is the Rebbe Moshiach Shlit. Yosef, Yitzchak is the Frierdiker Rebbe. And Dvar is the Rebbe Rashab. And all explanations in Miyad, the first thing is Mamish. Pshut, simply Mamish. Mamish. Chi Adonenu, Moreno, ורבינו, המשיח, לעולם.